Okay, we're at Nether's Farm. It's east of Columbus on Flint Ridge, and there's Ohio Flint here. So it's kind of a place you can go and self-mine. They have a setup here where you can pay for what you find and everything. So yeah, this is exciting. This is the first time we've prospected our own stones. So I don't know what we're gonna see over there. I guess I've heard there's kind of like pits that you can dig in or chisel rock out of. The idea here is kind of mine something and then cut that something, but hopefully we find something that's beautiful. I know, like looking online, I've seen Ohio Flint that has like yellows, and reds, and bands of black and all kinds of cool stuff in it. So hopefully this works out. We'll take you in and see what we find.
Man, some of this loose stuff looks really good. Although we maybe don't want something super drezzy like this one has on it, but the colors are really great. There's a pretty big mix in here of things that are like, there's some yellows, there's some reds, there's this kind of dark gray, a little bit of purple and blue in them. I think we might find something good in this pit. Wow, Doug, this piece looks super promising. There's a lot of reds, blues, swirls. Let's bust it open. See what the inside looks like. Oh yeah, I think this is gonna be it.
Did we find it?
I think we found it. Holy cow. I'm going to start on the entire set of this Ohio Flint. And so we're gonna cut one D4, two D10s, a D6, a D8, and a D20 from this whole chunk right here. This is possibly one of the only places you can get flint that is this heterogeneous in color. It's super bright. There's reds, there's greens, there's blues, yellows, oranges, and some cool spots where there's some black. And then once we get fully polished, we should get something that looks kind of like this. And every die from this set is going to be completely different because this rock is nowhere near homogeneous in its composition. It might so happen that once we start cutting this apart and we start seeing some of these veins here that might, there's a vein of this drezzy here that kind of runs in the center of this rock. If that ends up kind of destroying kind of the integrity of where we'd like to cut the die out of this, I will be resorting to these smaller pieces here. And so, yeah, we're gonna see how this goes. Stuff looks beautiful. Can't wait to cut it. For all of the dice in this set, we rough cut it 100 grit, then 240, 600 to do the final shaping, and then we went on to our pre-polish and polishing steps. These are the common grits we use for all of our dice. These grits are pretty common when we go from our rough stone to our roughly shaped and ready to polish die. So I was cutting in the main facets on the D10 when tragedy struck. A large piece splintered off, and this is likely due to its disparate composition. After measuring the height of the chip stone, I had left enough stone here that I was able to cut down through this break and we were able to recover it. So I think crisis is averted here. One of my favorite parts of making this set was that when you were cutting on lower grit laps, sparks would just shoot out. Despite this being a very difficult and time-consuming material to cut, the payoff of seeing all these colors polished will make all of this effort worth it. After doing the final shaping on the D20, I started to cut the bevels in, and I noticed that I made my first mistake. The bevels were uneven and they weren't converging at the meet points. Doug showed me that the easiest way to tackle this problem was to cut the bevels and make them very large, and then come back in and cut the main facets to their final depth. My second favorite die to cut in this set was the D12. The geometry of how this comes together is striking. This is the first time I've ever cut a rhombic dodecahedron. The purples and opaque kind of clear colors in this are just absolutely beautiful. One thing you'll notice in this video is there are a lot of time lapses, and that's because this set took a really long time to cut, and there was a few factors weighing in on that. The first being that this was the first time I'd ever cut a set, so I'm learning some new cut plans and how all of the meet points come together for each of the different types of dice. And the other thing is that this stone turned out to be really tough. And we went through, no joke, probably 8 or 10 laps between all the different grits as we were cutting this set. Okay, so the first 4 sides, bevels, and first set of facets on the pavilion are cut in. We'll cut the other 2 set of facets here, and this thing is looking sweet. This is the first D4 I've ever cut, and I really like how it's already coming together. This is going to be probably one of my favorite out of this set. The D4 is my favorite die for a couple reasons. The first is that it's a pretty unique cut plan. It's elongated and has like some very fancy bevels on each of the ends. And the colors in this are just phenomenal. There's a lot of black, there's some purple, little streaks of blue. It's absolutely gorgeous. Since flint is a type of quartz, we used our standard quartz polishing procedure, which was a 1200 lightning lap followed by a 3K lightning lap and cerium oxide on a Spectra Ultra lap. We polished up the second side of this D10 and it looks absolutely amazing. The blue in there looks like a nice blue river through some fiery mountains. We took a similar approach to the first side of the D20, where we cut the bevels in really large and then came back in and cut our main faces. I was really struggling to see how the shape with just the bevels in and then the main faces coming in on the second side and getting the meet points to line up properly. That was really hard for me to wrap my mind around, and so thankfully Doug was there to coach me through it. Cutting in these bevels, how do you know when to stop?
Yeah, so I just stopped on this one. I'm at 100 grit, so I want to stay far away from where I go, like the final. I don't want this to be near the final. So I'm using this vertical line here compared to these vertical lines down here.
Okay.
Now, when we put this in final, though, I'm not going to use that. Making the width look right is going to be more important than these little edges. They're not as noticeable as the width of the bevel.
Okay.
So the width of the bevel, like, if that's right, it'll look right. And that's kind of like maybe important to reiterate.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
The larger feature that you can see at 1x is so much more important than anything you can measure.
Okay.
And that's also why I say a lot of times, like, that's why I've stolen that measurement thing from you for a couple times.
Yes.
Because ultimately, like, that's not really that important.
It'll get you into trouble.
Yeah.
One thing I was trying to do is trying to measure and make all of these bevels extremely precise. And sometimes on a die that's complicated like this, you have to cut to make things look correct, as opposed to sitting here and trying to measure everything to be perfect.
blessing having Kai in the shop. He continues to ask great questions that require me to hone my understanding of gem cutting to give complete answers. His inquisitive nature inspires us to continue pushing this craft. It took almost a half a year to finish this set. It's incredible to finish up and take a step back and just admire the work. I have only made a few sets because it's such a big undertaking, but when they are finished, it's always such a special moment.
All right, guys, this set is for sale. If it's available, there will be a link in the description.